But to compare it with other systems of yoga, we will need some prerequisite, like we will need some knowledge about other systems of yoga. There is Patanjali yoga, there is Iyengar yoga that I know.
There are different. There are many in India. Especially if you become a yoga teacher, you basically are like people consider themselves enlightened in India. That's how the nature of Indians is. So, so yeah, like there are many schools of yoga, and everyone thinks that their school of yoga is great, and basically they have learned it from other yoga gurus. So it is basically
Hmm.
a guru system. In India, mainly it is a guru system. One person transfers or transmits his knowledge to another person, and it goes on like that. That's how it is in
Um,
India. There is also a spiritual flavor to it.
since there are so many different systems of yoga, who are the people that tend to stay with you doing Tantra yoga opposed to looking for something else?
So the different schools and systems of yoga that are already there in India, like I said, it has come through a very crude system, like a crude guru student system. So basically, the guru will have certain knowledge, he will pass it on to the student. The student will simply listen to what he learned from the guru, and he will imbibe it in his own life, and he'll try to teach that to his students, his or her students. So that is how it
Oh,
happens normally in India, because that's how, like, if you go around, you will find that we have all these gurus, many teachers. There are many systems of yoga, many gurus of yoga too. So the thing that separates the system of yoga that I teach is that it is like properly based on the anatomy and physiology of the body. It is not based on some teachings of a guru. It is based on the rule of rationality. This is something that I spoke about earlier also, the rule of rationality. So basically, scientific education and the rule of rationality. That is what makes Tantra yoga different from other schools of yoga. There is no tradition in this is purely based on understanding the human design, external design also,
hmm.
and internal design also. So like you can also understand by now, but after practicing it for so many years now, so you also know that it is based on what knowledge we already have, the scientific knowledge that we already have about human anatomy, about evolution, about the spine structure, about the endocrine system. So the other advantage of working on your spine is you're directly working on your endocrine system also, because the endocrine glands, they are aligned along with the spine. Like they are aligned either adjacent to the spine or they are in line with the spine. So they are getting affected too. They are getting stimulated too when you're working on your spine like that through tantra.
I mean, I guess one of the things that I noticed though over the years, I've done some Kriya yoga, I've done Raja yoga, I've done hot yoga. I've done I've done Ashtanga classes, Yin Yang yoga classes. They go under so many different names, and there are various times at which I felt like drawn to a certain practice. Like I was part of the Raja Yoga in Trinidad and Tobago. I didn't formally join them, but I used to go to regular meetings for about a year. And it was at a time when someone in the family wasn't well, and I was dealing with a lot of kind of emotional stress. And I was trying to learn a kind of a process of meditation, and it became something that I did. But I guess there's a time when people would find tantra yoga and it would kind of appeal to them. And I wonder, like if you've got a sense of the kinds of people who stay with you and do tantra yoga, what is it they're looking for, do you think?
So, like, instead of talking about individual experiences and individual opinions, I would rather talk about the rational aspect or the scientific aspect of all the systems that you mentioned also, and then I'll try to compare it
Mm.
with my system of yoga. So, like for example, you spoke
Okay.
about certain. I don't want to name anyone, and I'm not trying to criticize any other system of yoga. It's just that I'm just trying to
Mm.
state the facts. Like for example, when you focus on certain systems of yoga that deal with extensive breath work, right? Like
Mm.
you're doing a lot of extensive breath work. So there are a lot of spiritual organizations in India also that teach you certain breathing practices, and they teach you just that. They're not teaching you anything else also. They're just teaching you breath work, and there are certain specific breath work that they teach you. So what is happening when you learn breath work or pranayam or any kriya, pranayam, breath work, okay, whatever you want to call it? What happens is, you do the breathing practice, it will increase vital energy. So the human body, you can actually create an analogy with the electrical system or any of the machines that we have. So the energy output is increased when you do pranayam. The vital energy is
Right.
increased. It is similar to increasing the voltage to an electrical system.
Hmm. Does that come from biochemical changes as a result of increasing carbon dioxide in the blood, for example, and its impact on the brain, or does it come from somewhere else
So,
and
like,
other organs?
when you do those, like for example, I'll give you a simple example of a very famous breathing practice, wherein it's like a type of hyperoxidation, right? So when you do those hyperoxidation type of practices, it will uh, it will give you that high. it is it
Hmm.
is like a it is bound to give you that high. Like for example, if you increase the carbon dioxide concentration, it will make you feel dizzy. So it will give you that physiological trance like feeling. And when you're doing the
Hmm.
hyperoxidation type of thing, it will give you that oxidative high. So all these factors, when and this is what is taught many times. Most of the spiritual leaders or yoga teachers, they have learned it from their teachers. They don't question it also, and they teach it to their students. So it will
Right.
definitely give you that oxidative high. But it will, if you look at those people also, and those people who are practicing also, nothing has changed. Like structurally, nothing has changed. So it's like I try to compare this whole thing with the electrical system, because you can actually look at the human body as a neurochemical circuit. So you're increasing the so when you're practicing pranayam or all these vitality increasing practices, these breathing practices are basically vitality increasing practices. The reason why they tend to get attracted to that, because it's like a quick fix. You suddenly feel more energetic, that oxidative
Hmm.
high, or that artificial trance due to the increase in carbon dioxide or whatever. So you get that quick result, right? And it maybe it gives them a false sense of bliss also. But you have to understand that this was done purely at the level of breath. Nothing in their life changed, nothing in their bodies changed. They did the breathing
Hmm.
practice, and definitely yes, there is more energy output. If I compare it to the electrical system, I increase the voltage, it will get definitely, even in a bulb, it will glow more brightly if I increase the voltage. But if you think about it,
Sure.
it will burst after some time. It will get hot and it will burst. Why? Because the hardware is not suited for high voltage. It's the same thing with the
Hmm.
human body. You haven't changed anything at the physical level. You haven't changed anything at the level of the spine, the musculature of the spine. You haven't changed anything in that respect, and you're directly trying to increase the energy output. So it is definitely not the most efficient thing to do. And then you mentioned some other special organization, again I'll not name it, focusing on a particular gland, trying to stimulate a particular gland without actually working on the rest of the glands. It will definitely create an imbalance. You can see their bodies, it deteriorates. Why? Because they thought they got the master gland, so they don't have to worry about the other glands. That is also a wrong
Hmm.
concept. The sex glands are as important as the pineal gland. Unfortunately, there is a huge spiritual misconception, especially in India, which is also one of the most sexually suppressed countries in the world, I would say. uh, they have this wrong notion of spirituality, that you need to send all the energy in the upward direction and only stimulate the pineal gland, thinking that that is the important spiritual gland. No, I think the sex glands are as important in spirituality as the pineal gland. And this is where I think most of these spiritual organizations, they fail to understand that they need to work on the entire structure, and they need to do
Hmm.
it in the most efficient way. So that is where I would say even Tantra Yoga really covers everything. It's covering all the glands, including the pineal
Hmm.
gland. Whereas all the other systems of yoga, it's obviously very uh, very incomplete. It won't be, I won't call it wrong, because definitely there is a positive change, but it is incomplete, and it can give the person a false sense of enlightenment or bliss also.
Before you go on, just to clarify, when you say in Tantra we're working on the sex glands, you mean through asana practice, of course.
Through all the practices that we do, like for example, if you remember, we also practice certain locks, the
Yes,
bandhas,
exactly.
and there is something known as
Mm.
bandhatraya, if you remember. So that is
Hmm.
also affecting. You're literally pressing the heel against the perineum, and you're
Yes.
contracting. You have practices where you contracting the urinary sphincter, anal sphincter,
Yeah,
and letting the heel press the
exactly.
perineum. All these things, they
Sure.
are working. Not just the asanas, but the locks.
Sure. I just wanted to give it some context.
We have everything.
When you
We
say
have
we're
covered everything. We
sex
have covered breathing practices also, the asanas also, the
glands.
not just, and yeah, spine muscles will develop not just by keeping it stable. It requires a dynamic exercise also. We have covered the dynamic exercise also. The dynamic exercise that we do in Tantra is the best uh, exercise for isolating the spine and giving it a dynamic exercise. The dynamic exercise will provide it with time under tension, repetition, and isolation, but in a dynamic way. Whereas the static practices will give it, it's called isometric exercises. The static practices are isometric, in the meaning, isometric meaning the same length. You're not changing the length of the muscle, but you are increasing the tension over a period of time. Whereas the dynamic exercise is known as isotonic. That means the intensity is the same, but the length is changing. We are moving the spine. We are actually isolating the spine, loosening it with respect to the appendicular structure. If you think about it, like for example, the dynamic exercises that we have in Tantra, there are two exercises, one for the male body, one for the female body. When we practice it, you can actually feel it is loosening up the spine with respect to the appendicular structure. So that way it is isolating it and giving it a dynamic exercise also. And when we do the asanas, it is giving it the static exercise also, while isolating it. So isolation, and giving it dynamic exercise as well as static exercise, that a complete package is present in the system of Tantra Yoga, which is unfortunately not present in other systems of yoga. So yeah, that way you can actually compare and realize that indeed, yes, this is something that is covering everything. It's more complete.
So this is when I went to my Bharatnatyam class, and it was an intense session.
Okay.
It was a 2 hour session. Usually it is for 1 hour, and it requires a lot of stamina and balance and a lot of feet like tapping. Then I came home and I immediately sat and focused on my breathing. I was breathing out through my right nostril and something switched, and I was able to notice that. Or before that experience, I had never noticed the difference. That notice of breath shifting was possible because of yoga, I guess. Because of yoga, I could notice these physiological differences happening.
Okay, you're more
And
sensitive.
so I guess maybe yoga allows us to proprioception, if I am using the correct word,
Yeah,
and if you could explain
yeah.
proprioception.
Proprioception is basically, some people call it the sixth sense, or basically it is like when you are aware of the positioning of your body. Like this is the sort of sense that develops when you do pranayam and when you do postures. You become more aware of your body, of your muscles, the activation of the muscle. If you just close your eyes and if you just do the postures, you become more aware of position of the organs. And of course, as and when you get more sensitive, you're aware of the breath also. So this switching of the breath, it happens very, like it happens every day. It's a very common thing, switching that happens. It's just that you became a little bit more sensitive to it. Otherwise it actually happens
So
quite often.
I, I became more sensitive to it. So I'm getting to somewhere. I wanted to conclude what if it's not that other physical activities don't activate our glands or nerve plexi, but we are not able to perceive it. We are not able to notice it because that's not on breath level. And maybe yoga gives us room to notice that and helps us build this muscle of noticing things.
We do things like Virasan, for example, which balances the nadis, and that is the prerequisite. A lot of people practice alternate nostril breathing, for example. Anulom Vilom, it's known as Anulom Vilom, which is wrong because uh, because the nadis need to be balanced. When you before you the prerequisite for, and this is something that a lot of people don't know. So when a spiritual guru or a yoga teacher will declare just do Anulom Vilom and a lot of your diseases will get cured. uh, the thing what happens is they will do the Anulom Vilom pranayam at that time. It will feel good at that time. It will not have a lasting effect. Why? Because they haven't worked on their nadis. They haven't really balanced their nadis. There is no balance between the Ida and Pingala nadi, and without that balance, if you practice Anulom Vilom, it will not be effective. Because Anulom Vilom, actually, the prerequisite is that both the nadis should be open. And that happens when you do practices like Virasana, which is a tantric practice. It literally presses the perineum with you're pressing the heels against the perineum and you're sitting in that position for a long time. That pressure opens up the nadis, and it opens up the nadis from the base. If you think about it, we are not just superficially. So when you do Anulom Vilom, it is like you're forcing the nasal passage to open or close, right? But when you do Virasan, you're starting it from the base of the nadi. It's the Ida and Pingala nadi. It starts at the perineum. It doesn't start. It ends at the nostrils. So when you're doing Anulom Vilom, it is still a very superficial practice of opening up the nadis. The actual opening up of the nadis happens at the base of the perineum. It will open up at that base. It will move. It will that the stimulation will move up the spine, and then you will actually feel the opening up of the nadis. And then when you practice Anulom Vilom or alternate breathing, then that is effective, and that is what will cure disease. Not just practicing it superficially. Basically, there is a chain of there is an autonomic nerve chain that runs along the spine, which is like the anatomical representation of the nadis. It's not the actual, like you can't really translate these terms like that. But yeah, in a way you can, like, create an analogy. But yeah, so it starts from the whole nadi starts from the perineum. It moves along the spine and it ends at the opposite nostril. This is Ida, this is Pingala. The left side is Ida, right side is Pingala, and the central nadi, which is associated with the spine, is called the Sushumna nadi. Basically, it is associated with the spine, but you can't really say that it is the spine, because it's a little bit more profound than just calling it the spine. But yeah, you get the idea, the crude idea.